Hello, this is Tucker Johnson coming to you live for the second time today. Nimdzi is taking over the airwaves because of a scheduling miracle happened. We have two people. Right now, I have Robert Rogge, who I have known for a long time. I think we met originally at Localization World in Seattle, I want to say.
Yeah, it
Robert?
was it was in Seattle, yes, and that was an awesome conference, by the way. I had a lot of fun there.
Remember conferences? Remember that?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. I want to go back.
Exactly.
I miss conferences.
It's coming. It is coming, and I'm excited about that. Well, you, despite the fact that we haven't been to conferences, you've been doing quite a bit of speaking around out there and talking. You're always talking. I'm seeing blogs from Zingword. But today we're talking about local content creation versus transcreation, which I know is a subject that's near and dear to your heart. And a lot of our listeners might not even know what that is. They might be wondering, what is the difference? What is localization? And let alone, what is the difference between localization and transcreation? What is local content creation? And what is the difference between that and content creation? And that is what we want to get into today. Right, Robert?
Cool, let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
And just a quick reminder, here's how we do here on Nimdzi is these are pop-up sessions. These are not planned other than the fact that we have something on the calendar to talk to you together. So join us in the comments. We want these to build a community in the comments. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. We'll make sure to get those. If you have any disagreements, make sure to let us know as well. And if you're interested in scheduling a Nimdzi live session, being my next victim here, definitely let me know. My name is Tucker Johnson, and you can find me on LinkedIn. I'll talk to anybody. But without further ado, let's get this music out of here and let's go into it. Robert, what is
Right on.
local content? No, let's start here. What is transcreation? Let's define
Oh
that.
man,
Right?
I don't want to. I don't. Right on. Yeah. Well, transcreation is when you are translating content. You are adapting it for the local market, but you are doing like some additional creative steps to try to adapt that particular message. I think that there's probably about as many definitions of transcreation as there are like transcreators. So it's kind of difficult to define. Some translators think that transcreation is just translation done really well. But I think that most people seem to think that transcreation belongs in its own sort of category.
Yeah, most people,
We,
right?
I think so.
To your point, like transcreation is translation done really well, right? Like this is dangerous. This is super dangerous because it's fuzzy. It's a fuzzy definition of not just a term, but it's a fuzzy definition of a service, which presumably you're charging for. And people don't like to pay money for things that they don't know exactly what they're getting. So that's why I wanted to start with transcreation, because it's so important to
Yeah.
define that before you even get started.
Yeah, that's a really good point you make too, because I think if you were purchasing a translation service, and what you got back was a transcreation service, you might be surprised at the liberties that were taken with your content.
Right?
So it's good to have a good understanding of what you're talking about. So if anything, it's at least useful to define transcreation or have some kind of idea what it is, just so you know what service you're agreeing to provide or buy.
Yeah, because I've also heard this term. So, like my understanding of transcreation is it's essentially instead of translating from English to another language or a source language to a target language, word for word, like trying to follow the meaning of the sentence exactly, it's adapting the meaning of what's being said in the source language and then writing it again in a more fluent way in the target language, which sometimes means it's not a one-to-one. So if there's two sentences in the source language might be combined into one sentence in the target language. Idioms and cliches and those type of cultural things. Those are going to get changed around too, but it's
Hmm.
different from, you know, localization, because frankly, like the official term for localization, like the official definition of that, isn't that what localization is supposed to be? Like,
Yeah, yeah, that's
you know?
I mean some people say that, yeah. And it's for me when we talk about localization and translation, I tend to think that at least so far as the part of localization that is translation, they should be adapting it for the local market already. They should be doing those things, and so as part of translation, but yeah, I mean, defining these terms is actually pretty difficult. So I tend to just go with the sort of accepted thing, which is that transcreation is about like really changing and being and adapting the text into a totally new text. Like, and I tend to think of like slogans or things like that because that helps it to make it makes it easier for me to decide what transcreation is. When I think about translation, I think about translating the text, trying to adapt it for the local market, but really just focused on getting a good and accurate translation. That's not necessarily literal. Um, but and then when I think of localization, I guess it encompasses everything else besides the text, and then also the text itself, and maybe a little bit more into like messaging.
Okay.
But there's like a Venn diagram of these terms, and they you know
Yeah.
they overlap. So local content creation is actually pretty easy to define. Local content creation is just your instead of translating or transcreating, you're just going to write it again from scratch
Okay.
in the target language.
Okay.
So that one at least is easy to get.
So, but what does that mean though? So, write it again. How do you know what to write? Like, how is that different from translating? Is it
Hmm.
like what's that process?
Right. So let's go back to my first stories for that.
Ooh, story
So I
time.
founded, yeah, like way back in the day, like 10, 12 years ago, I had a small agency and we did a lot of content writing in it was like kind of like local content creation, but it had to be local content because it didn't work as a translated thing because they were actually like products launching in the target markets.
Oh, okay.
And then we did translations too. And I was starting off my career, and you know, you would have a conversation with a client, and you're like, okay, you know, this is going to cost this much to translate this blog post, for example.
Hmm.
And the client's like, oh, wow, that's kind of a lot. Because, you know, a lot of end clients don't realize how much translation costs. And then it's like, well, you know, and I remember way back in the day, I'm like, you know, we could just write you a blog post. So if you have like keywords, because usually you have your blog post is corresponding to like an SEO strategy and it has a keyword. And it's like, well, you know, we could just translate the keywords and then we could write you a fresh post for the same price as translating the post directly in the target language from the perspective of the person in that market. And you know, this is like 2010 or so. And I remember my clients were like, "What?
Right.
Like what?
Right.
What? I mean,
What is
and
this sorcery that you speak of? Like, we've never heard of
yeah,
this. Are you trying to steal money from me? Like, I mean,
yeah." And
it
they're like,
sounds like
"What?" They're
something
like, "No."
like what are you smoking? Like, if you've never heard of that before,
Mm,
right? It's like you want to do what now?
yeah, because it also because as a marketer, you know, and I mean now we had the panel, so we had the Loc for Home panel, and we had Paulina Maclis, we had Fabrizio Cataneo, and we had Nimdzi Zhang,
Right.
and you know Fabrizio's from Stripe, Paulina's from XTRF, and Creative Tribe, that's her company, and Lindsay's from Trip.com, and like these are people that are doing that kind of thing already. So
Right.
like there's part of the market that has started doing it. But back out there in the normal sort of area where you have like normal marketing people that need to get content translated, I think for them it's like super spooky to have locally created content because they don't know what it says. Do you know what I mean?
Right, right. It's and I get that from a marketer's perspective is like the
Hmm.
sheer terror that must come from not
Mm,
having, from losing control of your messaging, of losing control of your
mm,
brand, right? Because with marketing, so much thought and freaking focus groups go into like slogans, like
mm,
3 word sentences. So there's a lot of work to be done, and you've
mm,
really got to trust your linguist that they are going to accurately reflect that in the native language, or in their
mm,
native language. And this to me is one of, if without defining any other like reason or definition for transcreation or source content creation or marketing translation or like super duper localization with the cherry on top, like without having all of
mm,
these different content categories and quality categories, like there is very much a need just for a word like transcreation, just to describe this phenomenon of, or just to bill for this phenomenon, frankly, because we bill for
mm,
translation per word, and it's like I don't want to pay somebody for 3 words to translate my brand
mm,
slogan, right? Like if I'm
mm,
paying that person 50 cents, that terrifies me. I want to pay that person
mm,
$300. Right?
mm.
I want to pay that
Yeah.
person like a minimum, like a half day minimum fee retainer. I want them invested in my brand. I want them doing their research.
Mm,
I don't want them, hitting the submit button really quickly so that they can move on
mm.
to the next job and make some money, right?
Right.
So that's my
Yeah.
case for transcreation, is like you don't want to order translation for certain things. You want there to be a differentiated level of service
Yeah,
available
for
for you.
sure, for sure.
But I'm still
Yeah,
talking
I
about
think
transcreation. I'm sorry. We want to talk about copy creation.
well, just to bring up another point that you reminded me of is that so this term that we're using right now, local content creation,
Hmm.
I find it also interesting because it's a new term. Actually, I had never heard the term until we did the look from home panel or look from home panel, and
So whose term is
because
it? Whose term is it? Where did it come from? Like who was the first person that said it on that panel?
I think Fabrizio said it via email maybe prior when we were sort of looking for angles. And what I find interesting about it is it has the word local in it. And so like if you're I don't know where the term comes from exactly, but it's really just content creation, right?
Yeah.
But
So
local content creation is a term I think that if you're a localization manager in a company, you can also use that term internally so people get what you're actually trying to say.
oh.
Because you're trying to get more local, you're trying to adapt your content even more than you were before by just writing it locally. And so I think the term local content creation is actually kind of a good term. It's also a useful term for the localization industry because if you're a localization manager and you're going to the marketing team and you're like, okay, we need to start creating this content
Right.
in the target market from scratch, being able to use a term like local content creation is, I think it sounds very nice. Um,
What?
yeah.
So yeah, I like that because it's the age old story. People don't know what
Mm-hmm.
localization means. People don't know what we do. People don't know the
Mm-hmm.
importance of fill in the blank, right? And we talk a lot in this industry about like how to evangelize or how to educate people.
Yeah.
I don't like this educate because there's a power dynamic involved there,
Mm-hmm.
but like how do we evangelize localization within our organizations and preach the
Mm-hmm.
gospel of go to market, blah 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 blah. And sometimes the answer is much simpler. Stop trying to sell transcreate, or stop trying to like evangelize transcreation, and start rebrand it as local content creation. It's the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because people understand, the people that matter, the people that approve budgets, they understand
Mm-hmm.
what content creation is, even if they don't understand what transcreation is, or
Mm-hmm.
localization or internationalization, any of those acronyms
Yeah.
with the numbers in between.
So let's go into some examples where local content creation is makes a lot of sense. You can't just use it for everything. It depends on the type of content that you have. It depends on for example, the technical level of your content. It depends on the volume of your content, and then it also depends, I think, on the purpose of your content.
That's a big one. Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, right. So like in the panel, Nimdzi Zhang's from the travel industry, and I think the travel industry is a really good example of that because like let's say that you have a set of blog posts that you are preparing. Maybe you have like 250 blog posts or something about going to different destinations that year.
Okay.
The if you just translate those posts, they're not going to be adapted for the local market in the sense that it's written from the point of view of a German traveler or a Dutch traveler or a
Mm.
Chinese traveler. And I think we all know that different people travel differently, and some cultures travel differently than others. The things that they find interesting are different than others. And so, like, if you were, like, let's say you had 250 destinations and were going to write a blog post about each one, it would be relatively simple to write 250 fresh posts in all of your target languages because I think the travel industry is that content is not highly technical, for example. So it's like feasible to produce that content. It's going to convert better
Yeah,
because it's
you don't
written
need to
from.
like scour the internet for specialized linguists and specialized expert writers. Is that what you mean by it's easier to produce that type of content?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So I mean, you probably still have to scour the internet, but yeah, I
Oh,
mean, you
sure.
don't have to scour the internet
But you don't
too
need to
hard.
find like a PhD specialized in,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
reverse sim. I don't know. I don't know. Right.
Yeah, which is not to take away from travelers because there are some very, very good travelers, and I think traveling is also quite a skill. But
Traveling is a skill. Traveling is a skill that we're
yeah,
all going to have to relearn, unfortunately, folks. Although, where are you calling in from right now?
yeah, I'm on an island in Croatia.
Yeah.
So like I live in Croatia, but I'm right now on an island, and so getting a little bit of like national travel. But I flew to Spain twice during the pandemic now, and that was weird.
Yeah.
Um, but
Everything's been weird for the last 18 months.
mm,
So it's just like, going to the grocery store is weird. So
yeah.
it'll be over soon. So,
Well, we're on a bit of a sidetrack here, but it is a
yeah, we are.
pop-up video, right? But
It is.
like the second time I flew, I had it because you have to get these PCR tests, and you have to get, depending where you're flying, you may also need rapid antigen tests. And the first time I did it, it was very nerve-wracking. But like the last time I did it, I had to do so many tests. I was like just driving down to get my test,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh man, this is the new normal. Like I'm flying somewhere, and I got to go drive down to this place and get this test. And
Yeah, I agree. The first time I got my test, it was totally weird. And like the seventh time I got tested, I was like, all
yeah,
right, go get some
yeah,
McDonald's after this, I
exactly.
guess. But we
Yeah, yeah.
digress. Let's get back into
Mhm.
local content creation. I was thinking as you were talking, I was thinking of an example that I met with one time, and I'm not sure. I don't want to say names, but a large real estate online company, right? So here in the U.S.
Mhm.
Now, real estate is a market that's hyper local, right? It's
Mhm.
hyper local because just how people buy and sell and borrow for and finance real estate is very dependent upon
Mhm.
where you're located. Who can buy real estate is very dependent upon where you're located. I can't go to Australia and buy a kangaroo farm or whatever I want to buy in Australia because I'm not an Australian citizen, right?
Mhm.
Unless I'm wrong about that. I apologize if I am. Um, but here in the U.S., it's no different. I'm not an expert in this area, but anyways, this company I was going to, I was on a sales call with the salesperson, and I remember asking the salesperson on the way over there, I was like, "Why are we selling to a real estate company? We sell translation." Like we sell
Mhm.
localization. Like why? Why are we selling to a real estate company? At most, they'll probably ask us to do some Spanish marketing material for them,
Mhm.
right? At most, there's no money here, and the money was in marketing to overseas, specifically Chinese investors. because here
Ah,
in Washington State, that's a big, they've got the I forget what they call it, but it's like the sugar daddy visa or something. I don't know, but like if you
mhm,
buy property, if you invest into Washington State, if you invest into property and whatnot, then you can get a green card here. So it's a way for
mhm.
people to buy green cards to come
Right.
to come to the U.S. And so they wanted to have a hyper localized Chinese message that was out there and not translating from the English because there's no English corresponding to that. So this is the
Mhm,
example that I think of when I think of local content creation because
mhm,
this isn't even transcreation. This isn't taking transcreation would be taking the English material and like, all right, reading it, understanding what's the message they're trying to convey, what are the key points,
mhm.
what are the key, do I have any keywords from the marketing department, and then crafting something new based upon that. This source
Right.
content creation is sitting down and saying, I don't even want to read what they wrote in English. Like, I want to be talking
Mhm.
about stuff that's important for this market specifically, and then creating it from
Yeah.
scratch.
Yeah, I think another example that would be like that would be back in the travel industry too, is like national holidays, you know. So like if
Right.
let's say France has their own national holidays, and then if you were like a travel booking site, you would want to produce local content that's specifically about those national holidays and different things that they could do on that holiday. That's another example.
Have you seen
Hmm.
how Expedia does it? Are you aware of this?
No, no, I'm not.
So
But
it's super cool. I don't know what they're doing now. I don't know if they exist now.
mhm.
Thank you, 2020. But poor Expedia, poor Expedia. Anyways, I got to go to a Slug event. Slug is Seattle Localization User Groups. They meet here in Seattle, or at least they used to. I think they're getting started again here. But it was hosted over at no, it wasn't hosted at Expedia. It was hosted at King Big Fish Games, I think. It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Anyways, the speakers were from Expedia, and they have like this whole automated system to automatically generate content for different rental properties. And this isn't for like hotels, like professional, real quote unquote hotels. This is for like
Mhm.
their quote unquote like their Airbnb offering essentially, right? Because
Yeah.
they get into the timeshares and the rentals and stuff like that, and there's just
Mhm.
so much content that
Yeah.
they can't translate it all. So they have this automated system based upon
Mhm.
like what people want to know about, like is it close to a body of water, is it on
Mhm.
bus lines, is it, and based upon the
Mhm.
AI, it pulls these different
Mhm.
segments from
Yeah.
so it identifies these segments first of all in English and
Yeah.
maps to those in all of these different things. Anyways, it's neat. It's the opposite of transcreation because it's fully automated, but
Mhm.
it's still a super neat use case. And hey, if anyone from
Yeah.
Expedia is watching and I just completely butchered that, then schedule time. Come talk to me.
Well,
Set the record straight.
you know what's fun about that too is so because presumably just a side note, they have all the fields, you know, so like they know the amenities of the hotel, and it's
Right.
all like so it's in a database, and so it's probably relatively easy to generate that stuff. But the weird thing too is that like I think very soon, you know, you're going to be like talking to your phone, or you're going to be talking to your device, and you're going to be like, oh, hey, phone device, book me a hotel that's kind of like this and this and this and this and this, you know, and then your AI is going to go read the content generated by another AI, and then it's going to to book your hotel or something, you know. I find that interesting. I don't know if that's actually the way it will go, but yeah, that's a good example of local content creation too. Just automated local content
Yeah.
creation. Um,
Well, let's. I want to know. Well, first of all, do we have
mm.
anyone over here? Oh, let's get to the. We have some comments. Sorry, guys, I've been neglecting y'all over in the comments. It was turned off. I apologize. Do you mind, Robert? Let's go over here.
Let's do it.
Annalie Tinworth. Here's my stab at the. Ooh, I love this. Here's my stab at the definition of services. Translation: one-to-one relation between source and target is important. Okay, typically legal texts, EU text, or tech manuals. Oh, this is long. Localization. Purpose is to connect with your audience, typically what I do when working on UX or user experience copy. Transcreation. Purpose is to engage your audience, typically ads, taglines, etc. So work with the source text and a creative brief. Local content creation. Work from a creative brief and no source text,
Mhm.
typically with some post. That is an excellent freaking summary, Annalie.
Ye- I think it's better than ours.
Yeah, that was freaking
And
Annalie.
yeah,
Why do I have this joker on here? I should be interviewing you right now.
yeah. Well, just Annalie, just send your CV to Tucker after the live stream, and I'm sure Nimdzi is looking for help.
Yeah. All right. Joking aside, thank you very much for the comment. Christopher, we've got you in here too. In Spain, they have a huge overseas expat market, and they also have a golden visa scheme. Yeah, so we're referring to our comment. That's what they call it, golden visa. I didn't think it was called the sugar daddy visa. I just couldn't remember what it was called. So, well, so for content creation,
Mhm.
one last question, and then I want to get into, I want to talk a little bit about Zingword. Curious
Mhm.
about that. But local content creation, if I want to explore that, if I think this might be the right thing for me, for my globalization department, for my brand, what should I do? What are the steps that I should take? Who should I talk to? What are the resources I should read other than
Mhm.
listening to this podcast?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't think there's a one size fits all answer. There were some people when we did the panel that asked the same question, which is basically like, so if you're a localization manager and you want to start, producing local content, but you've never done that before, you've only translated content, where would you start? And I think it depends on the type of content that you have. I suppose that your set of options are to either A, work with people who are either in house or freelance. B, maybe your LSPs can provide that service. Or C, you could work with a marketing agency in the local market. And then, like, if you have in-country teams that can produce content, or that's another option too.
That's a
So,
really good point talking about in-country teams because
mhm,
if you work for a global organization or you work with a global organization that does have a presence in local markets, and typically, well, I mean, there's no typically, but many times it's a sales outpost or a marketing outpost or what
mhm.
have you. You have people there in those local markets, and they can be a really good resource for you
Oh
if you're
yeah.
looking into that.
Mhm.
One way, this is one way to think about it is I've heard a lot of people complain about the quality of their localization, the quality of their translation throughout my career. Not because I'm that horrible of a project manager, just because, shit happens. Like that's what we were talking about in our previous. There will always be quality issues, right? But, if you think about it, every complaint for a complaint against localization is just a hidden request for transcreation or a hidden request for source content creation. And take it from me, like that's sometimes not a conversation to be having with your client right as they're complaining about the quality. You don't want to tell them,
Mhm.
well, the quality is bad because you're not paying me enough. That does not go well. So
Mhm.
I'm not saying that, but if you're out there and you're working with a vendor, or maybe you've switched vendors because they keep messing up quality, and you just have these chronic quality problems, this is something to look into. Like maybe I need to be taking a different approach, right? Maybe we just need to
Mhm.
throw everything out, start new, have a transcreation strategy, have a source content creation, local content creation strategy,
Mhm.
um, whatever it may be. I don't know. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I think that when you're deciding whether or not local content creation is for you, and and I think we're talking mostly about marketing content here.
Yeah,
Like, you can look at the
in
type
case
of
in case that
content.
isn't clear, that's a problem when two fogies like you and
Mhm.
me talk about this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Is like we take things for granted, But yeah,
Mm,
that's a good point. Like most of what we're talking about when we're doing this kind of stuff is for marketing. You mentioned
yeah.
it. No,
I think we did.
Annalie
Yeah, we
mentioned it.
mentioned it, and we
I
mentioned,
think
yeah,
Annalie mentioned it, to be honest. So she's keeping
yeah.
us honest.
I think I mentioned SEO earlier,
You did.
but
You did. Yeah.
yeah. So like if you're thinking of your marketing communication set, even for a large enterprise, I mean, it's all kind of in the same. Every company has kind of the same set. I mean, you have your blog content, you have your social media content, you have printed content, you have longer form content like white papers or things like that, and like what your set is going to depend on what industry you're in, and how much of it you produce will depend on what industry you're in and
Hmm.
what your goals are. But I think that like if you're in an industry where you can either you can produce this local content effectively, and that's going to convert better. So like when you go to measure your stats in your marketing, if that content is going to convert better because it's written from a local perspective,
Mm-hmm.
then that's a win, and you should probably do it. If you are, a company that has like more difficult to produce content that's highly technical, but if you have the budget and the stakes are really high, it might be worth it for you to produce local content. In which case, it'll probably be more expensive than translation or transcreation, rather than less expensive. So those would be, I think, the two examples. And then, on the other side, I think if you're a translator, there's already a lot of translators that do transcreation that have added copywriting to their services
Mm-hmm.
as well. So I think that that's a long-standing trend now. And then if you're an LSP, I think that the thing you can do is when your client approaches you and they're like, well, we want to translate this marketing set, like whatever it is, like 500 blog posts or whatever, maybe what you can do is present local content creation as an alternative,
Yeah.
and just be prepared to explain it. So like there's some benefits. We can write better, more targeted copy for this target market, and it's going to cost the same or cheaper or more expensive. But you can justify the local content creation angle. Basically, it's got to convert better, right?
It's got to convert
And
better, which leads me before I want to ask you about A/B testing is what I want to ask you about, and
Mhm.
like what the role of A/B testing is in all of this. However,
Mhm.
before we get to that, like you make a really good point that local content creation is providing another option. And one, we do a lot of workshops. I do a lot of workshops for Nimdzi, and one of our
Mhm.
newer workshops, and I run it with Miguel here at Nimdzi, is I forget the name of it. It's basically about like data-driven storytelling, like how to have conversations with senior leadership and well, evangelize localization, right? How to convince the VPs, convince the CFO to give you more budget, to let you go into new markets,
Mhm.
whatever it may be on that. And one of the things that we talk about, like one of the slides that I go over, is the old classic give options, right? Like people, when you're selling something, when you're pitching something, when you're trying to persuade someone of something, like they people want to be in control of their
Mhm.
lives, of their destiny, of the world around them. So let them be in control. And you don't help someone be in control by saying, this is your only option. You help them feel in
Mhm.
control by saying, would you like to do A, B, or C? Right? And we got
Mhm.
the cheap option, we got the standard option, and we got the deluxe option. We got the quick
Mhm.
option, we got the standard option, and we got the, slow option, or whatever it may be, right? You can play around with these different variables. And this is just providing one more option for them. So even if transcreation is not called for, even if local content creation is not called for, doesn't hurt to have a conversation about that with your vendors. It doesn't hurt to have a conversation about that with your clients if you're on the LSP side.
Mhm.
It's like, are you aware of this? Right? Send them a.
Mhm.
I was going to say send them a link to this podcast. Sure, yeah, send them a link to this
Yeah.
podcast. And they can hear it from us.
Yeah, I think I think you're exactly right. And it also shows that, if you're a service provider, I think it shows that you know something about the objectives that the marketing department in that company has, right? Because you're actually talking about conversion rates, you're talking about trying to improve those numbers by producing a different kind of content or using a different method. And yeah, just it only says good things about you if you understand those things. And yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. So, A/B
Mm.
testing. What is the role of A/B testing in all of this? Because that's my mind is already kind of going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, so I'm not like A/B testing expert or anything.
Oh, neither am I.
Like
Neither
a
neither
lot
are
of
most people that do A/B testing, right? I don't think I've ever met an
yeah.
expert A/B tester. A/B testing is something, and that's the thing about A/B
Mm.
testing is like,
It can be
guys,
pretty hackish.
it's pretty hackish, but like no, but that's good news. That's like I
Mm.
love this kind of stuff. So like, listen to me for a second, guys. If you're watching this, like all six of you watching, A/B testing, you don't have to be a marketer. You don't have to be a data scientist. You don't have to be classically trained in A/B testing in order to do this. Like most people that do A/B
Mm.
testing aren't. It's a tool. There are tools available out there that you can use. A lot
Mm.
of them are free or very, very cheap to do. And frankly, it's not something that should be relegated only to the marketing department. Anybody who's
Mm.
putting stuff out there to clients or customers or users should have some basic awareness of what A/B testing is. And for those of you who are like
Mm.
super newbies, welcome. A/B testing is essentially creating a system where if I'm sending out something, whether it's putting a featured image on a website or sending an email campaign, I'm going to have two versions of that. I'm going to have an A and I'm going to have a B. And half
Mm.
of the people that log in online or half of the people that open the email are going to receive A, and half are going to be B, receive B. And then I'm going to track what is the behavior, what are the results from A, and what are the results from B. And if there's a delta
Mm.
there, then if A, twice as many people are opening the email campaign for A than they are for B, well, guess what? Stop sending B and send everybody else A. Right? So that's what
Mhm.
A/B testing is, and
Yeah,
I can't help
I
but
mean,
think
and
that
you have to do it, like
yeah,
you have to A/B test if you're going to launch local content because you want to see that it's converting better. I would add that I suspect that organizations that produce a large volume of content may not actually A/B test the content, but they may just compare it to trans-created content or translated content. So, like, if you were producing like 300 blog
oh,
posts,
that,
you
that's
might just
that's what I meant actually. That's what I meant. I'm not saying like write two different versions. I'm saying like have the
mm,
transcreated, so have a translated version,
yeah.
have a
Hmm.
transcreated version, and then have a version that you just wrote from scratch, like local copy creation.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
if you have a doubt in your mind about like, yeah, but is it worth it? Because like it's more expensive. Like, let's be honest about this. Like, it's much cheaper just to translate things instead of writing them from scratch or transcreating them, especially if you're using machine translation or other cat tools or whatever, right? So,
Hmm.
is that additional expense worth it? And that's what we want to find out with A/B testing. What is the
Yeah, exactly.
ROI of transcreation? What is the ROI of local content creation, essentially?
Mhm. And in the panel we did, all three of the panelists, I mean, they didn't share their numbers exactly, of course, but they all said that they've seen that the locally produced content outperformed the translated content sometimes. And that's another thing too, is like when you think about A/B testing and you think about those kinds of things, like if you don't have the budget for that or if you don't have the bandwidth for it, one thing you can do is just watch what other companies do that are A/B testing. So
Yeah.
if you see this big company over here in the travel industry or this real estate company or whatever, and you look at their stuff and they're A/B testing because they're huge companies and they have like unlimited resources. So you can watch what they do and you can just assume that they A/B tested it. And yeah, that's another
That's
into hack.
the poor man's version. If you can't
The
afford an
poor
A/B
man is
test, just Do whatever,
Copy
boss.
those guys.
I've said that before though, and it's not. It's true about multiple things. It's like, especially, I think Nimdzi was a startup. Well, we're still a startup. Once a startup, always a startup. But I think Zingward and Nimdzi kind of got started around the around the same time. Am I correct, or
Mhm.
am I way off base there?
I don't
We've
know.
been
When
around
did
for
you?
like 3 or 4 years now, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I think we got really serious about developing our software about 3, 4 years ago.
Yeah,
So it's about the same time.
yeah.
But we bootstrapped our software, so like we've been building a community. We've been producing a lot of communications, especially for translators.
Well, let's go
Um,
there because I
mhm.
wanted to ask you about Zingward, and so let's just go there
Cool.
right now. What is Zingward? Tell me.
So Zingword is in beta right now. It's a staffing system for translations. That's kind of what we're going with. So we're trying to for clients, we're trying to solve the problems that they have when they try to find and hire translators. So we want to make that faster and easier, and also like solve quality problems. So basically, being able to find a true professional translator that's specialized in the thing that you are doing and that is available for you to work with right now. And for translators, we are trying to give them a better way to reach clients, especially direct clients, but also agency clients. We are trying to give them a place where they can represent themselves better. And yeah, we're trying to help them market their services in a way. So, like by solving the issues of finding translators, we are also solving the issues that translators have when they try to market themselves or try to grow their businesses. So that's in a nutshell. There's other stuff that we're working on that I guess we'll be announcing in the next maybe.
Oh, it's top
Okay,
secret.
I gotta learn my lessons. I can't just go promising dates.
You can't.
But
Yeah, yeah,
what's
exactly.
that?
Is it top secret? Can you tell me? Is this an
Not on the
exclusive?
live
Are
stream.
we breaking news? Oh man. Oh
No,
man.
no,
All
no,
right, we'll
no. I
talk.
mean, it's an exciting project though, like because I think if if you're in the industry and you think about the space, actually not a lot of innovation has happened in the space of finding and staffing translators, right? So like we think about TMS systems, like they've made great progress. We think about cat tools. It's like, man, you can translate software, you can translate UIs, you can translate this, you can translate, there's all kinds of stuff. We think about like processes that we've developed in the industry. So like we have like each different sector has their own processes that they've worked out over the last, I don't know, 10, 20 years. So they have processes and techniques that are, delivering the best that they can achieve there. And then, at the moment where you go to like find translators and where translators are like representing themselves to people that are trying to hire them, I think we've not made as much progress in that area as we did in the rest of the industry. So, like, I hope that the stuff that we're going to do now is going to be innovative and people will appreciate it. And I think that, the early returns are that people are pretty excited about it.
Yeah. I there's a need, right? There's a need. Vendor management. I talked to
Mm-hmm.
a lot of different folks about vendor management on both sides, but mostly on the LSP side because let's face it,
Mm-hmm.
most clients outsource their vendor management. That's what they're doing when they hire an LSP, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big role. And vendor management, it's just kind of like the neglected redheaded stepchild of the localization company, right? Because
Yeah.
the salespeople are hip, slick, and cool. They got the travel budget. They're out there making a name
Mm-hmm.
for themselves. The project managers are like the shit. They know what they're
Mm-hmm.
doing. They got it down. They're the bread and butter. And vendor managers, right? And
Yeah.
don't ask me where quality managers lie on that. I don't want to get into that. But like vendor managers, people
Yeah.
always
Right.
forget about them. They are crucial to an
Yeah.
operation.
Well, I mean, every translation that is performed by a human being is I mean, you have to have a translator there. There's like it happens. It's like a core thing for the work, you know. Like it is the work,
It is
and
the work, but it's like a trans. No, it's that you don't have to have a translator. You have to have the right translator there, and I think that's
yeah,
what people
yeah.
forget. And especially
Mm,
monolinguals, like where I come from, it's people don't speak a lot of different languages, so it's hard for them to grasp this. So here's what I say: is like I am translating. I'm doing a project for Microsoft, just because I'm looking at them. I'm doing a project for Microsoft into Croatian, because you're in Croatia, and it's for their cloud server solution, whatever. Right
mhm.
now, people that aren't aware of localization, people that don't know how this industry, how this profession works, would think, I went to college with someone who speaks Croatian. You want me to call them? I can ask them because in their mind, they speak Croatian, they speak English, therefore they can translate. Now, then I would ask this: can you write me a one-page document or essay or article or blog or anything about cloud server software in English? And they'd say, well, no, I don't know anything about cloud server software. How could I write something about that? Like, exactly. If you can't write about it confidently, you can't translate it. I mean, you can translate it, but you can't translate it confidently. So that's how I like to explain that to people, and
Yeah,
their eyes
yeah.
still glaze over. But it's the best. It's the best explanation I got.
I think it's a good explanation, and yeah, I mean, I think that if you think about the industry and trying to ask translators to specialize in fields and to really focus on a field, I think too there's an issue of like making sure that that particular person has enough work in that field
Yeah.
to specialize in that field. And so if you just imagine like the whole like global network of translators getting applied to projects, it's not very efficient, you know. So like there's this translator over here that's specialized in this thing, but they're not getting hired for this job way over there because there's no way, you know.
Yeah.
And so then you end up with a lot of um, well, I mean, everybody says that they offer the best quality and they have the most specialized translators, but
Here we go.
under the hood, it's not really the case all the time. But we don't have a
Well,
lot of good
if
technology for
everybody
that.
is, this is the thing. If everybody says they have the best quality, then nobody has the best quality, right? Like
Yeah.
quality is a ridiculous subject to talk about, in my opinion.
Mhm.
This coming from the person, by the way, who just got done doing a 45-minute live stream talking about quality, right? So yes, the hypocrisy is real. I get it. That's fine. But here's why it's kind of a ridiculous thing. And the analogy I use is if I pay someone to come over to my house and replace my toilet, right? Well, first of all, I can
Mhm.
replace my own toilet, but my wife won't let me. So I pay a lot of money to come over to have someone come over and replace my toilet for me. And I never ask them like, "Hey, how how good of quality is that installation going to be, right? Like how good are you like, are you going to mess it up, right? Are you going to make
Mhm.
mistakes? Like, how often do you make mistakes? What type? What priority and
Mhm.
severity are the types of mistakes that you make? What categories of mistakes do you? No, I don't, because when I pay someone money to do a job, I expect them to do it right. And I don't
Mhm.
expect to pay extra for a third party LQA service, which is sold to me as an add on. No, if I'm paying you for localization, give me localization, right? Give me high quality,
Mhm.
right? So that's why I think, okay, rant over, but that's why quality is a little ridiculous for me to talk about. And I'd much rather talk about
Mhm.
things that lead to quality, right? So things like project
Yeah.
management and vendor management.
Well, there's something I'll throw out to the six listeners that we have.
Do we have six
Uh,
listeners? Oh,
I
we
don't know.
have 13. 13 on LinkedIn.
You
I
said
turned off the comments. I'm sorry, guys, if anyone's trying to comment.
said six earlier,
I
and
was being
I was just
facetious. I was.
I think that one of
But
the things
usually
that
what happens, just
Zingward,
by the way, like, well, people watch these afterwards because they're pop up. They're not announced or
yeah,
anything. Which, by the way, if you're watching now and you're not subscribed, like and subscribe so that you can. Yeah, yeah, you get the
click the
deal.
subscribe and
You get
ring the
you
bell
get
if
the
you're
deal.
on YouTube. Yeah,
Exactly.
ring that bell,
Ring
everybody.
the
Ring it.
bell. Yes, you're a YouTuber too, I see.
Ring Tucker's bell.
Wow. Okay. What were we talking about before I went on my
I think what I was going
influencer?
to say, yeah, what I was going to say is just that, like, from a vendor perspective, vendor management perspective, related to quality, one of the things that we want to make possible at Zingward, and I'm just going to say this, is we would like to make it possible for people to perform like a kind of like a vendor audit trail, so that if you are an LSP, you will actually be able to say
I like the
the
sound of that.
translators. Yeah, me too. I also like it, but I'm not going to go into any more details because it
Well,
just I'm
okay.
going to wait.
Come
You
into
have
more
to have me back
details.
on again in like 3 months.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Come back on in 3 months because that is something. Here's what I want to talk about with you. Now that you've mentioned that vendor audit trails is the finding the balance between transparency and efficiency. And what I mean by that
Mhm.
is I've seen this trend where buyers of localization they want transparency specifically in the form of I want to know the name CV social security number of the translator who's touching the people that are
Mhm.
touching my stuff, right? They want to know exactly
Mhm.
who they are, where they studied, what their expertise is, all of it. It's that control that we were talking about. However,
Mhm.
they also want the advantages of an outsourced language service provider, which
Mhm.
is to me one of the big advantage, like why you pay an LSP twice as much or almost twice as much as you would pay a freelancer, is because of
Mhm.
that added value, that vendor management, which we've been talking about this whole time.
Mhm.
So that's what I want to talk about next time. Let's not go into it now though,
All right.
because we are at 50 minutes, and I really try not to go over an hour on these.
We still got 13 people hanging out,
We still
so
got, well, it's
maybe you have to have your team edit the video down afterwards
uh,
for YouTube or something.
exactly, exactly. Well, this is my last live stream of today, but tomorrow Nimdzi is going live 3 times, I think. So, like,
Wow.
pop some popcorn and just make a day of it. Listen to us in the background. It'll be fun, guys. If you want to come join us on that. But Robert, last word. Last word. Anything I can plug? We plugged Zingword. I see you have a
If you're
newsletter
a
here.
translator, sign up at Zingword. We have an invitation system, so like we have a kind of a waiting list. You can join more than 10,000 translators who have already signed up. If you are someone who looks for translators or wants to hire translators, you'll soon be able to do so at zingword.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for everybody that joined us in the comments today. Uh, Once again,
Thank you, Tucker.
my name. Yeah, thank you, Robert Rogge, and I think maybe the most important thing that we all learned as a group today together is it is pronounced Rogge.
Yeah.
Rogge. For years, I have seen your name written and not spoken. So in my mind, I've always thought it was like Roge or Rogue or
Yeah,
something.
Rose or something.
Right?
Yeah.
So, Robert Rogge, ladies and gentlemen, from CEO and founder of Zingword. Thank you very much for coming
Thank
on.
you, Tucker.
Yes,
You're very
sir.
gracious.
All right, guys, that has been it for today. Let's thank the folks that brought us here, Nimdzi Insights. We do market research and consulting specialized in the language services industry, but not necessarily limited to it. We work with people that want to enter new markets around the world and not just do so in the normal way, but do so in a way that is really going to be speaking to their local customers, maximizing their return on investment for international operations. If you haven't already, make sure to like and I don't care if you like, to be honest, but go ahead and subscribe. As Robert said, hit the bell if you're on YouTube. It helps us out, but more importantly, it makes sure that you are notified when we go live with these pop-up events. So with that, I will bid you all a wonderful day, night, evening, wherever you are, and we will talk to you soon. Cheers.